Let's do it. So Byron's just coming back, so I was thinking we could go ahead. And we would read that story again. And it's actually a teaching that Jesus did in Matthew chapter 25 is where it is. And I was going to see if Brent Robertson wanted to do some reading. We can divide it up with Brent Robertson, and maybe Byron can read some.
We're going to start with
I can do that.
Okay.
31 through...
So, know what scripture to read, though.
Yeah, it's going to be all right, you got me. Matthew 25, and we'll start with verse 31. And I think we could do kind of like what Blake and Neil did the other day. There's a good breaking point in the middle of it, where he's talking to the sheep, and then the other half he's talking to the goats. Where did you stop reading
I
at?
finished 39. And
You said Matthew 25 and 30?
31.
31.
So 31 through 39?
Yeah.
Okay, so Brent, how about you read verses 31 through 39, and then Byron can read verses 40 all the way to the end of the chapter, 40 to 46. So just whenever you're ready, I believe we all have it. So you can take it away, Brent. We'll start with you.
To Matthew
25.
31 to 39?
That's right.
Okay, Matthew 31 to 39. The sheep and the goats. Matthew 31. When the Son of Man comes to his glory and all the angels with him, he will sit on the glorious throne. All the nations will gather before him, and he will separate the people from one another as a shepherd separates the sheep from the goats. He will put the sheep on his right and the goats on his left. Then the king will say to those on his right, "Come, you who are blessed by my Father. Take your inheritance, the kingdom prepared for you since the creation of the world. For I was hungry, and you gave me something to eat. I was thirsty, and you gave me something to drink. I was a stranger, and you invited me in. I needed clothes, and you clothed me. I was sick, and you looked after me. I was in prison, and you came and visited me." Then the righteous will answer him, "Lord, when did we see you hungry and feed you, or thirsty and give you something to drink? When did we see you a stranger and invite you in, or needing clothes and clothe you? When did we see you sick or in prison and go to visit you?"
And the king will say, "I will tell you the truth. When you did it to one of the least to my brothers and sisters, you were doing it to me." Then the king will turn on those on the left and say, "Away with you, you cursed ones, into the eternal fire prepared for devils and his demons. For I was hungry, and you didn't feed me. I was thirsty, and you didn't give me a drink. I was a stranger, and you didn't invite me into your home. I was naked, and you didn't give me clothing. I was sick and in prison, and you didn't visit me." Then they will reply, "Lord, when did we ever see you hungry or thirsty, or a stranger, or naked, or a sin in prison, and not help you?" And he will answer, "I tell you the truth. When you refuse to help the least of these my brothers and sisters, you are refusing to help me." And they will go away into eternal punishment, but the righteous will go into eternal life.
All right. So we were talking about this, and we did go through about half of what's on that sheet. We had already gone through that, and I'm just going to graze over it quickly, just so Byron can at least hear what we were saying and what some of the things that we were wanting to say about it. But we were talking about what a parable is, and a parable, I actually have it in here. the definition of what a parable is. Let's see. I know a parable is a fictitious story. It's a made-up story, but it actually has a meaning that can be heavenly, a heavenly meaning, or it could just simply be something that's connected to the laws of God, to teach us about God's laws, and also just matters in life, common matters in life. And so when you read through this, the two of you just read through it, the whole thing is really not like a parable except for two words, sheep and goats, because he's talking about people. But everything else, it's very clear. He says when the Son of Man comes in his glory, and then he refers to him as being the king. He sits on his throne. I mean, he's talking about Jesus. That is going to happen. That is referred to in many places throughout the Bible, from the Old Testament all the way into the New Testament. So it's a real scenario that is going to happen, and it's really not presented in a fictitious way. I guess only you could say is the sheep and the goats, because he's referring to them that way. And so we just briefly talked about, I tried to explain, my perspective about when that happens. That's actually referring to what the Bible talks about as his millennial reign. It's a 1,000-year reign that Jesus is going to have on earth. So the earth as we know it now is going to be destroyed. And again, my perception of what that's going to look like is that not that the earth will be destroyed to an ash. I mean, he's going to burn it up with fire. The Apostle Peter tells us that. It's going to burn with a fervent heat. But I don't think it's going to be burned down to a crispy ash that just disintegrates. I believe it's going to be like a shell. It'll be burned. Everything on it will be burned up, and it'll just be a shell of the earth. And then God will come after all that, and he's going to recreate it and like a renovation. And then once that happens, he's already purged out Satan. He's purged out Antichrist, the false prophet, which is another important character in the end times. It's really interesting. You know how our faith teaches us, it's almost like a trinity. You have Satan, and you have the false prophet, and then you have his Antichrist. It's really interesting how that is. And once they're purged out, they're going to be gone from the earth. They're going to be thrown into hell. And then eventually they'll be in the lake of fire, which is another place which is even bigger than hell. And then all the demon spirits are going to be purged. All the animals that are predators are going to be purged off of the earth. Their nature is going to become changed when they're recreated, and there's going to be animals again. There won't be lions going after. Yeah. All the prey is going to be prey. All the predators, they're going to be prey. Really, they're just all going to be at peace with one another. So that's what the earth is going to look like. So after the millennial reign of Christ, after that 1,000 years, then comes, I'm getting ahead of myself. Before that is the battle. It's the battle of Armageddon. And then before that was when God was pouring out his wrath on the inhabitants that are left on the earth. And then before that was the rapture. So it goes rapture, then it goes wrath of God, and then it would go battle of Armageddon, and then it would transition into the millennial reign of Jesus Christ on the earth, and all of his people that are going to be a part of his kingdom. So I was just setting the scene. So that's the scene. So this teaching that Jesus gives, this reading, is talking about the millennial reign of Christ. In verse 34, it refers to him as the king. It says, then the king will say, and he's going to speak to the righteous, and then later on he's going to speak to the unrighteous. He's going to speak to the sheep, and he's going to speak to the goats. Okay? So I just wanted to briefly cover that. And then in the second bullet, we had talked about how this Dr. John Broadus, when he was visiting Palestine, he reported seeing a shepherd leading his flock of white sheep and black goats that were all mingled together. And when he turned into a valley, having led them across the plain of Sharon, he turned around and faced his flock. And when a sheep came up, he tapped it with his long staff on the right side of his head. And then that sheep quickly moved off to his right. And then a goat he tapped on the other side, and it went to his left. So that's how he was handling the whole flock. It was a mixture of sheep and goats, which is very common, and we've covered that in the past in previous studies, how many times they would have sheep and goats in the same flock. They would even at times sleep together. But they never wanted them to go and graze together. So this practice of separation would often be done in the morning before the sheep are taken out of their sheepfold. Same thing with the goats. If they're in there together and they come out, they want to make sure that they're separating them and they're not grazing together. So sheep, I added a note to my sheet where it says here, sheep were created differently than goats for a reason. Sheep are dependent on their shepherd, whereas goats are more independent. So if they're grazing together, sheep will have a tendency to follow them, kind of follow their lead. Sheep are just by nature wanting to follow. And so there's that tendency for a sheep to follow some of these goats. And the ones that would do that could easily end up in trouble with what they're eating, because goats can eat all kinds of things that sheep don't do well with when they eat it. So that's really important. And that was something that I wanted to bring out. But sheep were created different. And what I want to point out that I don't think I hammered hard enough on the last Bible study is I think that one of the biggest things to take away from this is the nature of the creature. Sheep are a certain way by nature, and goats are a certain way by their nature, and they're very different. And I was talking about how certain breeds of sheep, they look very similar to goats. It's crazy. There's many breeds of sheep. There's different breeds of goats. I don't know as much about the goats, obviously. I've been studying the sheep more intently, but I saw a picture. I was telling these guys on Monday that I saw a picture. We did a Bible study on Monday instead of Sunday because the Super Bowl. So that's why we did it on Monday. But I was just saying, man, I was looking at a picture that they had on this website, and it was a picture of a sheep and a goat. And I was looking at it, I was like, man, I'm thinking, I was reading an article and they said, try to figure out which one's the sheep and which one's the goat. I couldn't do it. I really couldn't do it. They look that similar. So, although they look similar, by nature, they are extremely different. And we've already talked about how sheep are grazers, goats are browsers. So, goats will get up on top of things and they'll try to reach up to branches. They'll be eaten up in the trees. Whereas sheep, they put their head down, and that's how they're grazing. That's how they want to eat. And what they really enjoy the most is the soft green grass or leafy plants, things like that. They enjoy that probably more than anything. It's sweet to their taste buds and very enjoyable. So obviously sheep were created different, and this is what I wanted, that I should have hammered more on Monday, was that just as sheep are very different from goats, God wants us to be very different from worldly people of the world. We're people that are in the world, but the Apostle Paul says you're in the world, but you're not to be of it. We are to be different, and it's a call by Jesus. This is not, I believe it is intended to put some fear in us. Blake said it Monday. He said, man, after we read it, I said, this is pretty sobering, isn't it? And Blake said, it always is when it's talking about hell, and it's true. And so it does have the ability to put some fear in us, and we need to have the fear of God. We need to have the fear of what he's talking about here. Also, I want to say that this is also to teach us that we, like sheep, are really I don't want it to just become something that I say, many times, and it just kind of it's getting grazed over like a sheep. I want us to really take it in and really let it sink in our hearts that, man, we really need to be different. And we don't have the ability in and of ourselves, in our own power, to make that change. And it speaks to the idea of salvation not being of works. The Apostle Paul told us in Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 and 9, he says that it's by grace that we're saved through faith. And then he says it's not of works. It's not by our actions, it's not by our deeds that we're saved. And so I think that this can be confusing sometimes, because we know we're supposed to have good deeds. We're supposed to do good works. We know that. That's a fact. But that's not what saves us. What qualifies us is not the good things that we do. What qualifies a sheep to be a sheep, it's a sheep. It just is. It's got the wool, and it grows until it's sheared. It wants to eat grass and the soft green leafy things because it's a sheep. When it opens up its mouth to speak, it bleats. It bleats. That's what sheep do. And goats, it's something different. I don't remember what the term is for goats. I don't know. If anybody knows, shout it out. I don't know what they say about a goat, but sheep will bleat. And so the point is, because a sheep is going to bleat, because it's a sheep, it's going to bleat. Because it's a sheep, it's going to want to eat the green grass. But a goat, because it's a goat, it's going to want to go and not graze. It's going to want to browse. It's going to want to reach up. And it's want to go get into stuff that sheep naturally don't really want to get into. But when they're with goats, Neil said it. Neil said they're a bad influence on the sheep. Goats are a bad influence on the sheep. And just as goats are a bad influence on the sheep, worldly people of the world that have not surrendered their life to Jesus, they're a bad influence on us as Christians, as believers. And so I just want to really, hit that. And when Neil had said they're a bad influence on sheep, it was after Brent was looking up some stuff on goats and sheep and kind of the correlation, the differences, whatever. And he had read something. He said goats may lead sheep into dangerous situations. I love that. That right there, Brent, that was good. That was powerful. The more I thought about that today, I was just meditating on that. I was like, man, that is just like it is in our faith in Christ. We can be around certain people. It could be on the job or off the job. It could be at home. It could be in the neighborhood. But people in the world that have not surrendered their lives to Christ, they can be a very bad influence on us, and they can lead us into very dangerous situations. It's very obvious. I know I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but I just find it so interesting when you look at the correlations of the sheep and the goats and the things that Brent brought out on that. Man, it's like, dude, spot on. That's exactly how it is. And when Jesus was telling this story, this event of this judgment and this separation that's going to happen between the sheep and the goats, I have to believe that whether he was specifically thinking these things, he knew these things. Jesus knew. Jesus knew about sheep. It was part of their culture in Israel and in Jerusalem. There was lots of shepherds, lots of flocks and sheepfolds. And so there was a general knowledge that everyone had about shepherds and sheep and stuff like that. And so obviously Jesus is going to have that knowledge. So another thing that Brent had read and that he found out was sheep are stressed by goat behavior. I thought that was good. That was funny, man. When he said that, man, we all just kind of laughed. Man. It was like, yeah. So stop and think about it. Let's think about it. We're going to look at some stories in the Bible. So I added some scripture. And I'll tell you what I'm going to do, Brent. I should have done this at the beginning, but I'm going to send you a picture. Or if Neil, if you could do that, could you send him a picture of the new sheet instead of me doing it? Okay, that would probably make more sense. Sometimes I just get so caught up. Yeah. All right. So we're going to read some of these new scriptures. One more thing that I didn't say, sheep cannot tolerate what goats can tolerate pertaining to their diet. They can become sick and it can lead to death. It's the same way with believers, with Christians. If we're following and we're eating and partaking, let me say it like that, if we're partaking of the same things that the world is partaking of, it's going to make us spiritually sick. It's going to have a negative impact on our relationship with God, with Christ. And potentially, it will lead us to a spiritual death. It's exactly the same. Exactly the same. So, I just wanted to bring that out. So now, Proverbs 13:20. I would say, Neil, if you could read that one, and then you could take the next one, because it's just one verse in Proverbs.
Brennan should be in the chat.
He's put it in the team's chat, Brent.
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, good deal. Good deal. Proverbs 13:20.
Proverbs 13:20. Walk with the wise and become wise. Associate with fools and get in trouble. Oh, reminds me of a phrase that my brother used to say. You play stupid games, you win stupid prizes.
Oh, wow. Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes. That's good. He who walks with wise men will be wise, but the companion of fools, I know the King James says, will be destroyed. This one says, will suffer harm. Will suffer harm. Yeah, that's good.
All right, First Kings, you said?
Yeah, I'm going to try to get there with you. 1 Kings is the next one. Where is it? 3, 1 through 9. Okay. 1 Kings 3, 1 through 9.
This is for Solomon for wisdom.
It is, but there's something hidden in there. You wouldn't expect it to be there. It's really significant. Okay.
Chapter 3, 1 through 9. All right, Solomon
Yes.
asked for wisdom. Solomon made an alliance with Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and married one of his daughters. He brought her to live in the city of David until he could finish building his palace and the temple of the Lord and the wall around the city. At that time, the people of Israel sacrificed their offering at local places of worship, for a temple honoring the name of the Lord had not yet been built. Solomon loved the Lord and followed all the decrees of his father, David, except that Solomon, too, offered sacrifices and burnt incense at the local places of worship. The most important of these places of worship was at Gibeon. So the king went there and sacrificed 1,000 burnt offerings. That night the Lord appeared to Solomon in a dream, and God said, "What do you want? Ask, and I will give it to you."
He said that.
Sorry, I didn't say that.
What do you want?
He said he has got a question mark right there. Solomon replied, "You showed great and faithful love to your servant, my father David. Because he was honest and true and faithful to you, and you have continued to show his great and faithful love to him today by giving him a son to sit on his throne. Now, O Lord my God, you have made me king instead of my father, David. But I am like a little child who doesn't know his way around. And here I am in the midst of your own chosen people, a nation so great and numerous they cannot be counted. Give me an understanding heart so that I can govern your people well and know the difference between right and wrong. For who by myself is able to govern this great people of yours?" That's what
Okay, yeah, that is it. I'm sorry.
And then God
So-
was very pleased with this and said, "Not only am I going to give you wisdom, but I'm also going to make you richer than anybody ever."
I like the way you just pointed that out. God was very pleased with that. He was pleased with his question, what he asked for. He was pleased to.
What do you want?
What do you want? It was the way you said that question. That was funny, man. That really struck me a certain way. That was so hilarious.
I read to my kids and I try to emphasize on the questions sometimes when I'm reading.
Yeah.
So I read a little bit ahead in my mind, and sometimes
Yeah.
it doesn't come out right.
Yeah.
Sometimes it hits the point.
And you want to dramatize it
I'm
for the
good
kids.
at green eggs and ham if you ever want to hit
Oh,
that
what? Hey, you never know, man. You never know what'll come into
You
this
never
Bible
know.
study.
Yeah.
It might come in when you do a Bible study for us.
Maybe. You never know.
So, okay, so it was, man, I'm really glad you said that though, Neil. You said that you pointed out that it was pleasing to the Lord.
It was, yeah.
However, did y'all catch that in this passage, there was something that I think was very unpleasing to the Lord? Look at verse 3.
Actually, right where I went to was verse 3.
Now, read it, Byron. You want to read it again? Verse 3?
Solomon loved the Lord and followed all of the decrees of his father David, except that Solomon too offered sacrifices and burned incense at the local places of worship.
Okay, so what that means is, just to make sure everyone understands what I'm getting at, notice that it puts the word except or but, or, there's an exception there. So he's commending him. The author of 1 Kings is commending. He said, now Solomon loved the Lord, walking in the statutes of his father David. That's a good thing. David was legit. David was really legit as far as following God, except for the murder of Uriah the Hittite and stealing his wife and committing adultery with her. But outside of that, he really toted the line. He walked the line as far as living for God. Okay? So he says he walked in the statutes of his father David, except he sacrificed and burned incense on the high places. Now, he was sacrificing good sacrifices to God. He was burning incense to God, but it was where he was doing it. He was doing it on the high places. The high places were these hilltops or mountaintop areas that the pagans would go to worship and offer sacrifices to their gods. And so God wanted it to be something that was consecrated. And he already had something that was consecrated. What did Moses, by God's instruction, bring to the people to do sacrifices and all that? Remember? The wilderness tabernacle. They had the tabernacle. They still had it. But what does Solomon do? And notice in verse 3, it says he does that, but then look at the beginning. It says Solomon formed a marriage alliance with Pharaoh, king of Egypt. He made Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, his father-in-law, and took his daughter as his wife, brought her to the city of David until he had finished building his own house and the house of the Lord and the wall around Jerusalem. So that's just what happened. Was verse 1 is kind of just letting you know what he eventually does. But when in verse 3 it makes it clear that the house of the Lord, it wasn't built yet. But eventually it's going to get built. Okay? And so the point I wanted to make through this is the way that unbelievers are a bad influence on believers. He married the Pharaoh's daughter. And then he transitions from the tabernacle where sacrifices were supposed to be made or done, and he goes and does it on high places where the pagans, the heathens, the ones that don't know God, look, they were offered. Let me paint a real clear picture. One of these gods was Chemosh. I know it's different. Chemosh. Another one was Baal. So that's two. Another one was Ashtoreth. All three of those were gods that when they offered these sacrifices, sometimes they were babies. They were human children. And Solomon chose to go to a high place that possibly, I can't prove, but possibly something like that could have been done there. They were worshiping idols, false gods. And he goes and he offers a sacrifice to Jehovah God. It wasn't consecrated for that. They already had a place to do that. And so goats can lead sheep into dangerous situations and very bad directions. And I believe that there's a possibility that this marriage to the Pharaoh's daughter could possibly, maybe it had some influence there. I don't know. But I'm just making that point as a possibility. And this was early in Solomon's kingdom. This is early on. He's already, and what it's doing is it's showing you just a slight variation, just a slight compromise. And he's slowly moving in the direction of idolatry. And if you know anything about Solomon, he went full-fledged into idolatry. He continued to marry other women. He had concubines. He had over 700 of them. Wives and concubines, like combined, it was over 700 of them. This guy was producing a lot of children with all these women. It was out of control. And Moses had already given a command about the way kings were supposed to conduct themselves. This is another thing I find so interesting. I'm reading through the Bible, or I'm actually listening to my Bible audio in a year, and now I'm challenging myself to do it twice in a year. So in one of those first books of the Bible, I can't remember which one, Moses actually gives them instruction. I think it's Deuteronomy. He gives them instruction on how a king is supposed to behave. They don't have kings. There's no kings back then in Moses' day. And it's much later they end up Saul, right? Saul's the first one, and then David, then Solomon. Didn't have king, but Moses told them what the instructions were and what was appropriate for a king. And a king was not to have many wives. And Solomon, so that's where he ended up. He ended up making all those compromises. But you can see where it's already beginning to turn just 1 degree or 2 degrees in the wrong direction. You take the nose of an airplane and you turn that plane 1 degree in one direction or the other. By the time that plane runs out of fuel or makes it to wherever it's going, it's at a completely different destination because of 1 degree. All it took was 1 degree. Okay, so that I thought was important. And then 2 Corinthians 6:14, Brent. 2 Corinthians 6:14.
All right. 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Yes, sir. That is correct. Hold on one moment. We're almost there. Yes, sir. All right. We're ready.
I'm not.
That's funny.
Just give me 1 second.
I like it.
To 2 Corinthians 6:14.
Chapter 6 and then verse 14. 2 Corinthians chapter 6 and then verse 14. Just that one verse.
All right. Be ye not unequal yoked together with unbelievers. For what fellowship hath righteousness with unrighteousness? And what communion hath light with darkness?
Okay, I like it. This is the CSB, the Christian Standard Bible. It says, "Do not be yoked together with those who do not believe. For what partnership is there between righteousness and lawlessness? Or what fellowship does light have with darkness?" Does anybody have theirs say it a little different?
Righteousness be a partner with wickedness.
Okay.
We're going to have 2 different versions. Yoked with those who are different, with unbelievers.
Yep.
Or what partners do unrighteousness and law have.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's the Apostle Paul speaking to the Corinthian church, and they needed to hear it. Probably more than any other church, they needed to hear it. They had some serious things going on in that church. But he's letting them know, look, the light and the darkness, they don't mix together. The only darkness in this room, the only darkness in the room where Brent's at is going to be those areas where the light just isn't able to shine there for whatever reason. Under the table, in a corner, but they just don't mix. If the light is shining there, the darkness is going to scatter. It scatters from that area. And so he's making another great comparison with light and dark, and that we're supposed to be the light, and the world represents the darkness. And so
I think the interesting thing about that passage that kind of hit me too in the middle of this is you see a lot of temptation out in the world where people try to almost weaponize the Bible to get you to join their side. And I'm viewing that as like the goat, the influencer, right? Where they try to say, oh, I've heard different arguments from, abortion being biblical to, transgenderism being biblical to a number of things that you're going, they're proclaiming that to be biblical. Or we talk about different religions that try to influence people to follow their way, but they're doing the complete opposite of what we read in Matthew 25 and 30, 25, 31 through the end of the 46. And so staying away from that influence also means don't be yoked with them too, right? Don't set yourself up with that too. Be cautious, be wary of it, because there's a lot of it out there, and it's easy to fall into that trap too. You see it quite a bit.
That's good. I mean, think about what that scripture said. The words, the different words, like one was partner, partnership, yoke, join, So
The friend,
there's people in the world here. There's people in the world on board this platform. They're worldly people. They have a different way of looking at things. There was one guy that was here back during the Dover project, and even Ryberg, when we had that stuff going on, doing those projects to get all that set up. And there was one guy in particular, this guy he would go as far as to say that he was joking about his little daughter being a prostitute, joking about it. And later on, we realized, I know Steve O'Banion spent a lot of time in that particular bullpen with that guy, and he picked up rather quickly that he seemed to have some sort of a connection with the occult. I'm not saying that he was practicing. I don't know. He could have been. But he seemed to have some kind of an affection for it, like the way he would talk, and when things like that would come up. He thought it was a joke. He thought it was laughable. He thought it was great how Hamas had attacked Israel and all those, what was it, over 200 people? Or I can't remember the number, but that got killed or kidnapped, and all the atrocities, the rape and everything else that was done in that initial attack when that first started. So I'm just making that point, and that's really extreme. That's really extreme. I know I just gave you a very extreme example, but that's all the way on one end of the spectrum. But even people that are not that extreme, people that just don't believe in being faithful to your wife, being faithful to a wife, meaning, they believe it's okay to fornicate. They believe it's no big deal. The Apostle Paul and Jesus, they've given some very strict instruction. Moses gave very strict commands, from God about it, not to do it. It's sin. And again, I know I said it earlier tonight, but sin is what separates us from God. It's sin, And so it's something that we really need to take it very serious. We need to take it serious. So in the same way unbelievers are a bad influence on believers, that's how it is with the goats and the sheep. It's the same way. And then Brent had mentioned Monday, he said that goats are notorious for milking with the wrong mother. That right there, dude, Brent, it didn't hit me when you read it the other day, like it's hitting me today, but I had already read something about, I was like, what's the personality of a goat? And one of the things they were saying is they're unruly, they're independent, they tend to be rebels. And one word that they used, they said they're vulgar. And I was like, well, vulgar? How would that apply? But when I thought about this, I'm like, that is vulgar. That fits. Okay, yeah. You got a toddler or a very young child that goes over to another mother wanting to start nursing. That is vulgar. Like, that's not your mother. That's not your territory. Your mother's not going to be happy with that, you know? And so I was like, man, that's good, Brent. I'm glad you read that. Vulgar, you know? But they are unruly. They're very difficult. I read things where it said they can be trained. They are trainable, but they're harder to train than like with a sheep because they're less dependent because of that fact. And so anyway, I wanted to bring that out. And then, so let's see, it's 1, 2, 3, the fourth bullet down. That's where we were supposed to pick up before the stuff I added. It says it may be difficult to see it this way at first, but this judgment of separating the sheep from the goats is really based on the nature of the individual rather than their works. I know he mentions works. Jesus mentions the works of the righteous, the sheep, how they fed him when he was hungry. They visited him when he was in prison. They clothed him when he was naked, and so on. And it mentions all those works. And so it programs the mind to think works, 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 works. And yes, we need to produce good works. But I want to make it clear, Ephesians chapter 2, verses 8 through 9, which I already had quoted, it makes it clear that salvation is not of works. Salvation is not of works. Whereas James 2, 14 through 18 teaches us, and we definitely need to look up James 2, 14 through 18. Were you looking up Ephesians or were you looking for James?
I could do either one.
Okay. Why don't you do James 2, 14 through 18? We definitely need to read that. It teaches us that a saving faith must result in a changed life. In other words, there must be works. There must be good works that follow if I truly am changed. How do you know when someone is changed anyway? You know by their works. God knows because he looks at the heart. Sam brought that out in the last Bible study, how God, he doesn't judge by the outward appearance, but God can see the heart. God can look right through your chest, and he can look inside. He can see what's in your spirit, in your soul, in your heart, what you're thinking, and what's going on in there. He can see right there. So that's awesome about God, that he can do that. We're a little different because we don't know what's in the heart, so we tend to look at the only thing we really can judge by is by what we see, right? We see the works that are in people's lives, the fruit. And so that's how we tend to judge. So, Byron, if you would, you can go ahead and read it, James chapter 2, verses 14 through 18.
All right. Faith without good deeds is dead. What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions? Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye, have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. Now, someone may argue, some people have faith, others have good deeds. But I say, how can you show me your faith if you don't have good deeds? I will show you my faith by my good deeds.
Right. And that's self-explanatory.
Yeah.
That is self-explanatory. That speaks for itself. So there's a part that you read, and I like the way that translation read it. Let's see where it was. It was a particular... let's see. Can that kind of faith... I think that's how it was worded in yours. Can that kind of faith save him?
That kind of faith save anyone. Yep.
What verse is that?
That is
Verse 14?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this one says, and I like the way that reads, what good is it my brothers and sisters, if someone claims to have faith but does not have works, can such faith save him? I still think yours said it the best. Can that kind of faith save you? That right there makes the point. So I can believe in God, I can believe that God wants me to do it, but if I don't do it when there's an opportunity to do it, what kind of faith is that? And what good is the faith? You know, so it's not, it's okay, I believe that he wants me to do it, but I don't believe so much so that I'm willing to actively follow what he commands, follow what he's instructed me to do. So that's the reason. So getting back to the original reading passage where he's talking about the separation of the sheep and the goats, it says James 2:14 through 18 teaches us that a saving faith must result in a changed life. And I believe that's what Jesus is saying. I believe that's what he's pointing out in the righteous. You maybe wasn't always like that, but you were when it counted. You were during this period of time. It will produce good works. The sheep and the goats will respectively do certain things because of the nature of who or what they are. In this separation, what was done or not done points squarely to who or what you already are, a believer or an unbeliever. So again, I believe that's really what he's saying. I believe that's what the point is that Jesus is making. He's not saying, well, you know, you did all these things for my brothers, and so we're going to, there's a part in here where we talk about who he might be talking about when he says my brothers. But a person's works do not determine if they are saved or unsaved, a sheep or a goat. This has already been determined by God, and in this separation, he is pointing it out and backing it up. So he's backing up what he points out with the individual's works. He's just pointing it out. He said, when I was hungry, you fed me. When I was naked, you clothed me. When I was in prison, you came to visit me. When I was sick, you came to me. He's pointing out the nature of a sheep. You are a sheep. You are going to enter into the kingdom of heaven. You're going to spend eternity with me, not because you did those things, but because you are a sheep, and that's what sheep do. You see, a sheep that's in my sheepfold. You're this breed of sheep, a Christian breed of sheep. You're that breed. So he's pointing it out, backing it up with the individual's works that have or have not been done. The verdict is already decided. At this point, it is being pronounced. It's just being pronounced. There will be no question about anyone's sheepiness or their goatness, if I could use that made-up word, those two made-up words. Okay? Yeah. So, the next bullet. The consequences in verse 41 and verse 46 speak of everlasting fire prepared for the devil and his angels and eternal punishment. In Revelation 20, 11 through 15, those who have been in hell will then be thrown into the lake of fire along with the devil, Antichrist, and the false prophet. And that's all referenced. That's all referenced in Revelation 19:20 and Revelation 20, verse 10. So you want to look that up, Neil?
Sure.
It's all close together, Revelation 19:20 and then Revelation 20, verse 10.
All right, Revelation 19, verse 20. And the beast was captured, and with him the false prophet, who did mighty miracles on behalf of the beast. Miracles that deceived all who had accepted the mark of the beast and who worshipped his statue. Both the beast and his false prophet were thrown alive in fiery lake of burning sulfur.
Okay.
20. And then we're doing
Chapter 20, verse 10.
chapter 20, verse Then the devil, who had deceived them, was thrown into the fiery lake of burning sulfur, joining the beast and the false prophet. There they will be tormented day and night forever and ever.
Okay? So the consequences of what they did not do speaks, and it points squarely, kind of like the way I worded it there, it points squarely at the fact that that other group, they're goats. You're not, so when he tells these groups you're going to hell, it's not so much just because you didn't do all those things. It's because of who you are. It's the nature of who you are. That is you. That you are a goat. You are a goat. Okay? And so the last bullet says the language Jesus uses in Matthew 25:40, where he says, "You did it to the least of one of my brothers, you have done it to me," has been interpreted different ways. Some believe it would be those who will help the end times, or the end time Jews, because Jesus was a Jew. That's why he would say, "my brothers." So some would believe it would be those who will help the end time Jews in their time of need as they are escaping Jerusalem because of Antichrist's abomination mentioned in Matthew 24:15 through 22. Others believe it is referring to the saints, as in the children of God on earth during that time. And honestly, I don't have a really strong view on this. I believe it makes sense to be the Jews because he was a Jew. He says, when you did it to the least of my brothers. And we know that when Antichrist is on the scene, when Antichrist commits the abomination, Jesus gives specific instructions. Let's read it. Matthew 24, verses 15 through 22. Is it Byron's turn, I believe?
That's fine.
Matthew 24.
15 through what?
15 through 22. Let's hold on just a moment and let's see if, make sure everyone's got it. Are you turning there, Brent? Let us know when you're good.
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay, we're ready.
The day is coming when we'll, hold on. The day is coming when you will see what Daniel the prophet spoke about. The sacral goat,
Sacrilegious.
okay.
Oh.
Object that causes desolation, standing in the holy place. Reader, pay attention. Then those in Judea must flee to the hills. A person out on the deck of a roof must not go down into the house to pack. A person out in the field must not return even to get a coat. How terrible it will be for pregnant women and the nursing mothers in those days. And pray that your flight will not be in the winter or in the Sabbath, for there will be a greater anguish than at any time since the world began, and it will never be so great again. In fact, unless the time of calamity is shortened, not a single person will survive, but it will be shortened for the sake of God's chosen ones. Then if anyone tells you, look, here is the Messiah, or there he is, don't believe it.
Okay, that's good. Yep, so the point I was really wanting to focus on, the biggest thing right there, look at it's verse 16. He says, then those who are in Judea must flee to the mountains. So the ones who are going to be in Judea are going to be a lot of Jews. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of non-Jews, but probably more Jews than anything else. And that's when it's really going to hit the fan, I believe. So for him to be talking about Jews, that makes a lot of sense. For him to be talking about Christians and believers, that makes sense to me as well, because the Antichrist is going to want to kill the saints. He's going to want to destroy and kill the saints. And I believe the saints points more at Christians. That's just my personal view of this topic. And then it's obvious he's going to be wanting to kill Jews. There's no question about that. He's going to want to destroy the Jewish race. Okay?
That's happening right now.
And it's happening right now. He says it's going to be unlike any other time in history. There will not be anything like it. He's speaking of the severity of it. And that's true. That is happening. That is happening now to some degree. So there's one more thing. This is a sheet that I didn't give to everybody, but after I get done with it, if you want it, I'll give you a copy. It's really, really good, and it makes my point really well, what I want to end this Bible study today. I don't know if y'all have heard of this lady. She was born in the 40s, so she's not with us anymore. Her name is Wilma Rudolph. And it's a story about how she went from a polio-infected baby or young girl, to an Olympic champion. She was born prematurely, weighing just 4.5 pounds at birth. Her father had 14 children by his first marriage, and his second marriage produced 8 more children, of which Wilma was the 6th. Wilma contracted polio when she was 4 years old. Her left leg became twisted, and her doctor said that she would never be able to walk again, but her mother said she would. It was difficult to find a hospital to treat a black child with polio, and Wilma's mother took her twice weekly for water and heat therapy to a hospital which was 50 miles away. After 2 years, Wilma was able to walk with a steel brace on her withered left leg. Wilma was prescribed routine massage therapy. Her mother learned it from the medical staff and taught it to her siblings. After 5 years of 4 daily massages, Wilma was able to walk without a brace. For another 2 years, she had to wear an orthopedic shoe for support. In 1953, at the age of 12, Wilma Rudolph was able to stop using any support and walk like other children. After that, however, begins the fast run of her dream career. One day, when she was suffering from polio, her mother asked her this: "Who would you like to be when you grow up?" Little Wilma Rudolph answered her mother's question as follows: "I want to be the fastest woman in the world." The mother was a little surprised by her daughter's answer. Wilma was a basketball enthusiast. Her sister was already in the basketball team of their school. Wilma earned a position on the team when her father said her sister would join the team only if Wilma was allowed to join too. So Wilma became a basketball star, scoring 803 points in 25 games, a new state record in girls basketball, and led her team to the state championship. She even set the state record of 49 points in one game. Wilma's major break came when she was discovered by Tennessee State track and field coach Ed Temple. She joined his summer program at Tennessee State. At the age of 16, Wilma earned a place on the U.S. Olympic track and field team for the 1956 Summer Olympics in Melbourne, Australia. Rudolph won the Olympic bronze medal in the 4x100 meter relay at the Olympics within 5 years from the day she had first walked. At the 1960 Rome Olympics, Wilma Rudolph won the 100 meter final in 11 seconds, breaking the world record by 0.3 seconds. But the record was not awarded to her because of a tailwind of 2.75 meters. She then won the 200 meters in the 23.2 seconds, a new Olympic record. Her margin of victory was so great that the camera on the finish line didn't catch any of her rivals. Finally, she combined with Tennessee State teammates Martha Hudson, Lucinda Williams, and Barbara Jones to win the 400-meter relay in 44.5 seconds, setting a world record. Due to a mistake in the baton exchange, Wilma Rudolph does not receive the baton properly, and the baton lands on the runway. Wilma regained the baton in the blink of an eye and ended the match unexpectedly, leaving a vulnerable souvenir in Olympic history. Rudolph was the first American woman to win 3 gold medals at a single Olympics. Due to her astonishing speed, she was hailed throughout the world as the fastest woman in history. They said, "Don't blink, you might miss her." And that would be a shame. The Italians nicknamed her La Gazella Nera, which means the black gazelle. To the French, she was La Perle Noire, the black pearl. And back home, she was called the Tennessee Tornado. When Wilma returned home, when Wilma returned from Rome, the governor of Tennessee, Buford Ellington, planned to head her welcome home celebration. However, Rudolph refused to attend a segregated event. Due to this, her homecoming parade and banquet were the first fully integrated municipal events in her hometown, Clarksville. She was inducted into the U.S. Olympic Hall of Fame in 1983, honored with the National Sports Award in 1993, and inducted into the National Women's Hall of Fame in 94. In 1999, ESPN ranked her as the 41st greatest athlete of the 20th century. The story of Wilma Glodian Rudolph, the woman who fought against all odds to become the fastest woman in the world, has served as a source of inspiration for many athletes. She shared her remarkable story with the world in 1977 with her autobiography, Wilma. And this is the point I'm getting to. I'm at the very end. Sometime after she had shared her dream to be the fastest woman in the world, Rudolph's mother started to wake her very early every morning to go run before school. One morning she asked her mom, "Why do I have to wake so early before school? The other kids don't have to do it." Her mom answered, "You are not going where the other kids are going. The price you pay is going to be different." Her mother effectively raised the fastest woman in the world at that time in history. And so I wanted to use her life because it's such a remarkable story to say that we as the sheep, we as Christians, the price that we pay is supposed to be different. And where we're going is not where the goats are going. We're not going to the same place. So obviously our life is supposed to look very different. And if we look in the mirror and we see we're very disappointed, which I am many, many times, I just go and I find me a place where I can get before God and I begin to pray and confess my sins and ask Him to deal with it and make me the sheep that He's called me to be. So that's what I've got, man. I'm going to close this in prayer. I'm going to close this up in prayer.